It was a very, very difficult time globally. Al-Qaeda captured me twice in Algeria. As much as I could have been the charming, bicycle riding, friendly South African, they didn't care in some places, all because of my religion and my skin color. And that was okay. I had to understand that, you know.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. We have some very wild stories for you today, that's for sure. I'm not quite sure how it managed to work out, but I was lucky enough to speak with an amazing guest. Before I jump into our guest today, it's time for just a little bit of housekeeping. If you are new to the podcast, then welcome. It would be fantastic if you could just give the subscribe button or a follow button or however you listen a tap, and that way you will be up to date with every episode that comes in every other week. If you've been following this podcast for a while and you like what you hear, then by all means, please feel free to shoot it over to someone else who you think would also enjoy the kind of content that we're producing. We're always trying to grow this thing, and the more people who hear about it, the more it grows, the more amazing guests I can get on the podcast, like the one we have today, a man who goes by the name Riaan Manser. This man has several world records, some Guinness World Records. He has been kidnapped multiple times. He has been held by police multiple times. He is the kind of guy who, when everyone else is like, no, that's too crazy to do, he's the one who says, fuck it, and just does it. Anyway, he is far better at telling stories than I am. He is a public speaker. He's a very inspirational person. That is quite enough waffling from me for now. Here's Riaan.
Robin, how's it?
Hello. How are you doing?
Yeah. No, I'm good, man. Give me just, I don't know what this is going to look like. Very dramatic, eh? Yeah.
That's all right.
Sort of a very legend bar here at the Royal Cape Yacht Club.
I was going to.
They've let me have exclusively for myself.
I want to have a better look at that.
It's stunning, man. It's like a heritage place. I mean, this is one of the first parts of this. It's 120 years old, this yacht club, and I think this was the first little building. So all these places start with like a manor house, and this was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's got some serious stories in there. Many, many years of drunken conversations over whiskey, I bet.
And a couple of bar brawls, and I mean, guys fiddling with other guys' girls and stuff, Robin, hold for me 1 second.
Yeah.
Ek sal nie net sê, hulle is op 'n podcast te record, so as jy moet net weet asseblief. Want ek gebruik dit as die agtergrond. Asseblief man. Dis net 'n uur, so as hulle inkom, hulle gaan nie in die podcast wees nie, maar dit gaan net te groot as dit geraas is, gaan dit 'n probleem wees. Shane, thanks man, dankie.
Baie dankie julle.
Nice. That's Robin. The guys are helping me out now. I told them I've got this VIP podcast, so that's why they're jumping.
Always good.
All yours, eh?
Okay, perfect. Thank you, man. Welcome to the podcast. I have a quick question, and this might be a silly one. Do you happen to have a pair of headphones that you can plug into this?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
Are you not hearing me clearly enough?
I'm hearing you clearly.
There's a bit of an echo.
It's just an audio thing. It means that we can have two separate sound files. So then I can just make it sound like you said anything, Riaan.
How many of these do you do a week? Do you get to squeeze in sometimes a few?
Yeah, I used to do more. I used to do more, but what I realized, I was doing 2 or 3 a week. Hanneke, my wife, and I are lucky enough. We head over to South Africa quite often. Nice, you got a pint in there as well. Good. We head over.
No, a coffee. Yeah.
Okay, looks
they
like
give me
you
a big coffee,
got yourself a Guinness. Yeah, we head over to South Africa for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months of the year. So we absolutely love it over there.
How did you meet her?
In in Camps Bay.
Oh, yes.
Cafe Caprice. Everybody laughs when I say we met at Cafe Caprice as well. Yeah, people don't go exactly for long-term relationships, but somehow it worked out for us.
My wife and I also met at a pub, and it's like, we've done some high-profile interviews, and where we sit in Good Morning Hawaii, and 20 years into our relationship, and they ask us how we met, and then my wife just says, we met in a pub. Yes, I'm still trying to tell some romantic story, and my wife just kicks me and says, get on with it, we're 20 years into this, so now I'm with you. Same story.
Sounds a lot like my wife. Gets annoyed with the extra embellishments that always seem to happen with storytelling. Yeah, so 2 or 3 a week is what I was doing before, but actually what I realized is I wasn't having as much fun, I was spending so much time planning, organizing, all the admin that comes with that I wasn't able to get off and do so many adventures myself. So I dropped it back a bit.
Sure.
And it meant that I could go off. I didn't want to be in a position where I was missing some of those experiences because I'm like tied to a desk. I'm sure you can relate to that. So, yeah.
Man, also well done, man. I mean, you're a lot younger than me, but I mean, you've got there's a maturity in being able to make the tough calls, and usually they're around finance. And sometimes when you're halfway up Maslow's hierarchy, it's hard just to dodge the fact you want to be comfortable. But then you realize there is a lot of comfort of different levels, and just the chasing that dollar is hard sometimes.
It is. I can totally relate to what you're saying, man, and thank you. It was. I think my wife and I are very grateful that we realized that pretty early on, when we were about 30, actually, because we moved over to America and we live here now, and took that big flashy job working for a tech company, and that whole thing. You're like, oh, we've made it. That's that thing. But I've never been unhappier. Never been unhappier in my life, and that's the thing, right? It's. Yeah, you get to a point where you realize then, what do I actually need to have fun and be happy in my life? So, and I'm sure you can relate to that too, right? So tell me about, I've got so many questions for you today, man. Like I want to, hopefully, I mean, I don't know how stretched you are for time. So it'd be good to get an idea of how much time you have today. Maybe we can do that as a little,
I'm all yours now. So please don't,
okay, good.
Don't hold back. I mean, I'd like to be in bed before midnight. That's sort of just like maybe a little gray area.
Okay, no, awesome. I think we'll be done long before that. So I want to ask you as well about your memories of growing up and all that kind of stuff. But what were we just talking about? We were just it's escaped my brain now.
We're talking about making big decisions, and
yes,
you and your wife had decided you didn't chase just doing these podcasts one after another, which sometimes is super ambitious. But
yes, okay. So
you were just commenting on that.
It's that balance, right? And I think from the research that I've done about you, you went through that experience as well, right? Like you were working to have a career. So what was that like? Am I right in understanding you were in the medical industry in some capacity?
Yeah, I studied human resource, so I think I've just been utilized as a gatekeeper with this medical company. It was wonderful, man. It was really just magic. The people I was working with, we were bringing primary healthcare to the masses, and it's a global problem. I mean, it's not even in the States where you guys live. Primary healthcare is a massive issue. You talk about things like Obamacare, and the globe has this universal problem of being able to look after its citizens, and the responsibility lying in the government's hands. And this company that I was working for, my goodness, these guys were obviously capitalists.
Yeah.
But they'd worked out, for 35 Rand, 45 Rand, you could see a doctor, get your medicine, and get a pat on the back on your way out. You could do it for that money. And I was working for them, and I was happy until that first chapter in my book that I described that moment. And unfortunately, I've never been a hippie. I've never been a slave to other people's thoughts and the rhetoric that's going possibly around there was no social media at that time.
Yeah.
But you could easily fall into the trap of, believing a YouTube channel and you need to give up everything you've got. And I just had that moment, and I try not dramatize it when I tell people, but that Sunday afternoon dread. I mean, when I stand in front of audiences and from the biggest businesses in the world, it never changes. Everybody has that Sunday afternoon dread.
Yeah.
If you've got a 9-to-5 job. And no, that's all I had. So, I mean, I try not dramatize it. I just thought, what am I doing, man? I'm 27, 28 years old. Is this it? And the answer is quite clear. This shouldn't be it. We're here for a short time, and I wanted it to be a good time, and I didn't know what that meant. So, heck, Robin, you're also talking to me now with a little bit of wisdom, dare I say it. I mean, being able to look back. I love it that I'm going, yes, I've got little gray hairs coming in. Yes, I've battled my entire life trying to look wise and also have wise things to say. But only with time, Robin, have I realized what the immenseness of that decision was that day, and then leaving in 2003 on the bicycle trip.
Yeah. So,
are you busy calling me?
No, I'm not. That's someone else. You want to take a moment?
Are you not?
I'm not calling you.
Just
See what they say.
Robin, yes, this must be the most disjointed start to any.
No, it's not even
hello,
close.
Security. Security. Hello. Yes, hello. It's Riaan Manser here. From Shaka Zulu. It is my Checker 6060 parcel. If you can keep it for me, please.
Oh, she's busy on other. She can hear.
Okay, thanks so much. So just leave it with her, please. Thanks, Nyabo.
Oh, I love it. That's such a South Africa moment.
Switch my phone off. Oh man, it's just nuts. It's like shame, and people are just doing their jobs. It's like, I just want him to leave it, but he's doing the right thing.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
looking after my interests.
Yeah, he's got to make sure everything's I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It's important, hey. It's
also a first world thing. Robin, we reckon, yes, we go on adventures. We go to foreign countries and people can't understand people. And it's, just the environment's different, dangerous, all these things. And that guy on his little motorbike doing deliveries, that guy can probably, after a month at Checkers, could write a book that will entertain the biggest business people in the world, So
for sure.
His own adventure today.
So I was going to ask you a question. We were just talking about the fact that you ditched your job. You realized that you didn't want to have that 9-to-5 life for the rest of you can see it way off in the future. So you decided to quit, but did you quit before you had the plan of going cycling around the world? Were you just like, this is it, I'm done? And it was then that you had the space to think of going traveling, or had you had this as like a nugget in your mind for a while?
No, it definitely was brewing. I mean, you're asking me now, looking back, not consciously would I have thought I was thinking, I remember that I did think about it consciously after the bicycle trip and realized that Sunday feeling was something that I had week after week after week. So, I mean, and I just couldn't define it. Yeah, and it is hard to define. Robin, with all the respect in the world, man, a 27-year-old knows nothing.
Yeah.
I was another 27-year-old. 27-year-olds that listen to this will be thinking they've got it all sorted out. The old people have screwed up the world. They're here to fix it. You're only going to realize when you're 45, 50, how little you knew then. And, man, I thought I knew a lot. I mean, I thought I understood what it means to live a purposeful life and direction. I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
I've got two beautiful little boys now. Perspective on life has entirely changed. But back to your question is, no, I didn't consciously have nuggets that were falling and saying to me, make a move, make a move, make a move. It was that Sunday, that 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I realized now in my life, I mean, I'm sitting here at the yacht club. I was sitting, how I bought my boat was 20 seconds in Mauritius on a beach with my wife and saying to her, gee whiskers, I've promised to buy a boat for 5 years.
Yeah.
I promise you now, in the next month I buy it. And I made that decision in 20 seconds. No, not beforehand. That Sunday night was actually the change in my life. Robin, the beauty about it too, and this is one lesson I take with me, and it's one thing to sometimes just ground me, is that when you make big decisions and you think they're so monumental, stop expecting the world to respond all grandiosely and can't believe what an incredible decision you made. The world doesn't give a flying if. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And secondly, take the pressure off yourself that this needs to be the most groundbreaking moment of your life. You could fail tremendously,
Yeah.
but if you're going to fail tremendously, you know. So I've taken that pressure off myself. I am going to live a purposeful life, and I'm going to live a great life. I'm going to be a good father, a good husband. I am going to be those things. Those are decisions I'm making now, probably in the same forthrightness and enthusiasm that I did going around Africa on the bicycle.
Okay, so let's talk more about that trip around Africa, if you don't mind. It was a little while ago, but I'd love to hear. I mean, there's so many questions I have about it. Like, I mean, what was it? 37,000 kilometer trip circumnavigating the whole continent of Africa. Is that right?
It was a little bit more. My bicycle computer showed 42,000 kilometers.
Wow.
I tried to be all factual about my journey towards the end because, I wanted to record it, and I had a very good last 2 months realizing, the historicalness of it. I mean,
yeah.
I believe people out there trying to be adventurous were sissies. The guys were following routes others were following, and it gets people who want to be adventurous and want to claim things. Towards the end, I got my wife to take a map that we had, and was the National Geographic Africa Atlas. She took a ruler. She went to the last millimeter, Robin, where she calculated what the distance was directly from town to town, and that was about 36,500 kilometers. But Robin, I can tell you with hand on my heart that I was not able to ride town to town in a direct straight line.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
zigzagged
for
a
sure.
hell of a lot. So yeah, but it took me 2 years to answer your fact question. It's 36,500 kilometers by maps distance, and then 2 years, 2 months, and 15 days that I got back to exactly the place that I'd started in Cape Town.
Oh, that's so wild. And also, then you're saying about not knowing the direction. I'm sure all the potholes probably added a few thousand kilometers as well.
Oh man, Robin, like you talk now, like I don't even think the bicycle's in a museum in the
Okay.
direction of where your wife hails from.
Okay.
In Crabo, and I mean sometimes I've stood next to the bicycle myself, and you'll think I'm saying this. I look at that bicycle and I say, how the hell did I get around the continent? I mean,
Yeah.
I went where people weren't willing to go on that little 26-incher. So I think that up and down is the distance I haven't added, but 42,000 kilometers probably added in the ups
Yeah.
and downs.
Yeah. So, and also then this is to give a bit of context. This was in what, 2000, early 2000s, like mid 2000s. And at that point,
2003, 4, and 5.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So context, no smartphones, no GPS setup. You were just using, yeah, I mean, you're literally just going kind of raw dogging it, I guess they would say these days.
Yeah,
And
I think there's beautiful, yeah, the technology. My goodness, there wasn't even Facebook or Twitter. People say to me, You're familiar with my CV. I've done some big journeys, and I've never been like, I want to have followers, or I need to get following to. I did it because I want to achieve something phenomenal. It was not even in my mind. I mean, Facebook came out later.
yeah,
And to answer your question, I had this beautiful. My wife still says she doesn't know anybody that's had as many cell phones as I have had. I was fixated on getting the new cell phone. I don't know if before your time, there was a device called the Palm. It
yeah,
was a cell phone, looked like a BlackBerry.
I remember.
Man, I had Palm sent me all their gear. I mean, it had a little keyboard attached to a little little phone. It looked like no, it was phenomenal getting through those phones that supposedly were on the way to being smart,
Yes.
and being able to send messages.
Okay, perfect. So, at the very beginning of this thing, did you have sponsors, or was it just like, I'm just going to go do this thing, and then momentum kind of built up as you were going, and people were like, this guy might actually do this thing, might actually succeed. How did that work?
Yeah, it's another good lesson. I mean, I look at all people that I think there's probably a presumption that sponsors, and again, I encourage people if they really want a myriad of answers. The stuff that I write about in the book is my naivety and also my determination. And you talk about one of them being around sponsors. I mean, I literally went to the people that I hoped could just make sure I was okay. The bicycle guys, tent guys, a couple of spares. Didn't go to sponsors. I mean, there was nothing for me to ask them for. I had a little bit of money in the bank, and I was going to live off like $3 to $5 a day. It was my plan,
Yeah,
$3, $5 a day, and sleep on the road. But no, I didn't have any sponsors. I mean, you take the equal interest was 5 people and a dog at the waterfront saying goodbye to me. Everybody now that says, "Oh man, I know Riaan Manser and I supported him." If you want to have a list of the people that I know genuinely did support me and believe in me, I'll give you that list. But anybody that just says it flippantly, don't trust them, because there was nobody that said to me I'd make it. Not even my girlfriend at the time and my wife today believed that it was a worthwhile and a possible thing.
yeah.
I left with her even doubting me. So, and in a nice way, so you touch on something. There's a great lesson in that. Sometimes you can start something that everybody says was impossible or probably not going to happen.
It's amazing that she was able to support you as well, being away so long. Hey, I mean, I think quite a lot of partners would struggle with that idea. Forgive me, her name is it's Fasti,
Fasti.
Right? Fasti.
Yeah,
Well, I
Fasti
mean,
started with a V, but Fasti in Afrikaans.
yes. So, I mean, that must have been tough as well. I can't imagine communication was that frequent with her if you were traveling around, jumping between all kinds of different places with, I guess, different SIM cards, cell phone coverage, whatever that would have been. I can't imagine what it would have been at that time. What was that like?
Yeah, the towers were getting put up in Africa.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's another great experience I had in seeing how the telecommunications and some green energy in Eritrea. I saw them putting up wind turbines. I was off the beaten tracks. I mean, sometimes in places where people didn't live, but satellite towers were getting put up. Libya was a beautiful connection story. I mean, I was cycling through a country where only the richest of the richest, the wealthiest people were able to buy a SIM card, never mind being able to afford airtime. And I arrived in Sirt, or before Sirt even. It was the first town before I got to Tripoli. And I begged people. I went to the shopkeepers. And then one guy that was the DSTV, which is like your cable TV agent in Africa, he let me stay at his house. And I begged him. I said, how do I find a SIM card? It's a massive country, Libya. What do I do? And he said to me, listen, man, you first of all, you need big money. I left his house the following morning dejected, thinking no communication for another month.
Yeah.
And it was about 5 kilometers into my trip, and the road that runs across Libya, I mean, it's just for hundreds of kilometers, there's not a town. And I stopped alongside the desert, this concrete road that was edged on the desert, my 1 foot in the sand and my 1 foot on the concrete. And I was sipping water. And then I glanced down, and right by my foot, something shone. I looked down and I realized it was a Nokia, didn't know it, but it was a Nokia 5110 that I picked up. I looked at it, and then I thought, wow, somebody must have left it on top of their car roof and driven off, and then boom, boom. Robin, I take that phone and I think to myself, and I don't want to be all virtuous here that I was trying to really leave it for the person, but I dropped the phone back where I found it, and I dropped it maybe half a meter. As it was busy falling back to the ground, I saw the glisten again. I realized it was the SIM card in the back of the phone. Wow, I pick up that phone, I undo the SIM card, I pop it into my phone. Messages are flying through, all in Arabic. I can't understand them. But I send a message from my phone now, from this number, to my girlfriend. It delivers. There I had a SIM card for the entire route all the way through Libya. I got to Alexandria, which is the town in Egypt, the first town, and I asked the innkeeper that I was staying at. I said to him, "Please tell me what these messages mean." And it was a guy busy begging me and pleading me for that entire 3 weeks in Libya to please bring his SIM card back for him. He needs it.
Shit.
So then, yes. Luckily, I couldn't read Arabic at the time.
Yeah.
And the guy contacted him. We got his SIM card back to him. But gee whiskers, communication, man. I mean, there's a sad story in that Libya chapter where the SIM card actually allowed me to get a piece of news that I didn't want with my dogs that I really, yes, man, I didn't have kids and my dogs were everything.
Yeah.
And Fusty was able to get through near a cell phone tower and give me bad news that they were burying one of my dogs. So communication sometimes it delivers bad news, sometimes comforting to make contact with people back home, but hey, valuable. But yes, like you say, connectivity, cell phones were it.
That can be hard mentally, right? Like you're absolutely right. There are some shows that I've had a few guests on this podcast there's a show called Alone, which actually they just did their first one in South Africa. Basically, 10 people go to an area with very little resources, and it's actually self-filmed as well. So it's, no support, and they just try and survive for like 3 or 4 months, and whoever lasts the longest wins $500,000 or something like that. So it's pretty savage. Usually it's in like the Arctic as well.
Oh, wow.
So it's brutal. It goes into winter and there's ice, like the lakes freeze over and stuff.
Sure.
But actually they have a thing. I remember people telling me that they have a question which is like, you can know like if something's going on, or we can not tell you if something's going on. Like that's you can choose that beforehand, and it's a powerful thing, right? Like, because if you are trying to focus on this thing, maybe you don't want to know information about your dogs or some of that, because you're at such a slippery slope. If you're short on calories, emotionally you can take a dive very quickly, and it's but maybe you do want to know, so I guess it's a personal decision. So
it's exactly what I was getting at. It was like do I want the bad news or don't I?
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
So you were talking about being in large desert areas, and I'm sure that was many, many, many miles or kilometers of this trip. Water must have been a huge factor. How much water did you carry with you when you were going off? Like, what's the most that you were carrying? Because I know that you had a big, heavy kind of setup.
I did initially, Robin. The setup was, it was so naive, but fair enough. Again, you'd forgive me because, I was trying to get to places again, that most people hadn't. From Namibia onwards into Angola, that was sort of unventured. And I was overpacked when I got to like the northern part of South Africa into Namibia. I was able to dump a lot of the gear. I mean, you would have laughed. I packed shoes, and I mean, people probably sent me the shoes as like a sponsor, but I decided I was going to take my cycling shoes. I was going to have casual shoes, and then when I get invited for dinner, I had smart shoes. Oh my goodness, I bombed that stuff so quickly. I had little flip-flops afterwards, like, oh, bugger that. I had smarter clothes. Literally, I got rid of everything: 2 shirts, 2 pants, and 2 underpants. I think 2 underpants that I could, be versatile with. And so I bombed it. And then my bicycle weighed about 50 kilograms when I left the waterfront in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And eventually got it to a streamlined 35. I did get a bit cocky, and I mean that in the South African version of being cocky. Of course, I wasn't being cocky, but looking back now, goodness, sometimes I would sit with like 2 little 750 ml bottles of water, and I was heading for a long stretch. And I just believed, I'd stop a car, or I would find somebody. The problem areas probably for me were Sudan,
Okay.
coming along that coast down from Shelatin in Egypt towards Port Sudan. There's no roads; it's just desert. I was pushing the bicycle when there was little crusty areas that I could get some momentum on. I would go, but literally moving at 3 kilometers an hour, and before you knew it, I was without water. I only had one moment on the 2 years and 2 months where I thought, this is it. I mean, I had very close calls with the Grim Reaper, but I only once I filmed myself saying, like, I'm probably not going to make this out of this desert. I'd run out of water. I was filming myself saying, hey, I appreciate everybody's backing me. I mean, I really did. And then far in the distance, like a silhouette, and I thought I was imagining it was one of those old Bedford trucks. And it was just moving at this almost like a pace that seemed unreal. It was just moving too smoothly over the dunes. And I thought I was hallucinating. I dropped my bicycle, two little 750 ml bottles of water, and it felt like I was running, sprinting. And I was moving on the sand. And eventually the Bedford truck turned slightly towards me and stopped in front of me. And nobody got off. They decanted some dirty brown water into my little bottles for me.
Yeah.
That looked like diesel, and it smelled like diesel as well. And I mean, when they drove off, nobody offered any more, but I was so grateful. And then also I remember thinking to myself, if I don't die of lack of water or thirst, I will die of whatever is in this diesel water. So I had no much choice. And then, I mean, it was another 10 kilometers of hell. I mean, it was a hard day. I had many hard days on that trip, but that was a day when I thought, just keep moving forward, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Behind me, it was almost as if I was surprised, a very, very dune-laden area. A car came up behind me. They didn't see me. And then suddenly we were over the ridge of this dune, a big, fancy Land Cruiser. The guy didn't bring his whole window down. He just undid it by maybe an inch or two. And he was worried about the bugs that were sitting on me. He didn't ask me if I was okay or if I had enough water or food. He asked me what those bugs were on me. You know, that was the most inquisitive guy I've ever met. But I just want to tell you where the water story was a positive one. That guy just topped up and gave me extra water, extra bottles. So I made it all the way to Port Sudan quite safely, without dehydration or, dying of thirst.
That's wild, man. I think it sounds already it's becoming apparent that if you had been more cautious and tried to plan ahead more, there were definitely stretches where you just be like, this isn't possible. And I think many people probably didn't want to do it because of that, right? And so it was just like let's go, we'll figure it out as we go. Because of that you were able to succeed. I mean, that's must have been really daunting. But so there were also other kind of things there that as you were going through areas, like I have a note here, like landmines. Some of the areas, I think I remember some nugget of something I listened to or watched where people were like, no, it should be safe for you to go through, but there might be landmines.
Oh no, man. I'm so glad you bring up things I normally don't get asked about. So, I mean, for any guy that's ever done any touring on a bicycle, it really is all of the meet the kind people. Oh, they all got good hearts, or they're all giving. They'll feed you. They will give you accommodation. Blah blah blah. I am so inundated with people in Angola. I'm mobbed everywhere I stop. My patience is so thin. I mean, I'm suffering, Robin. I'm really suffering. I get to this little village, and the people mob me again. They're fiddling with everything. You feel in a little bit of danger.
Yeah.
And in Angola, it was that. It's a very robust people and nation. And this one village I went into, I was, I wasn't being the friendly Riaan Manser that I usually am. I thought I was being friendly enough, but I think I was being short and abrupt. The guys in their faces, I could see that they weren't feeling the love. Eventually, I said, guys, I'm going to go. I can't stand here and get mobbed by you. I've got to get going. I took past guys that were lying on the ground, on the pole, and they had metal detectors in front of them. And they were just busy clearing a little patch that I was planning to cycle through. They had these white rocks to create a path. They were working for the Prince Trust for Prince Diners, clearing the path that I was going to cycle. Robin, that's humble pie, man. I was choking on that humble pie. I was stuffing it down my throat. I mean, the ludicrousness of the whole thing was they were making it possible for me not to get blown up into smithereens, and here I was being irritated with the village and their enthusiasm for me. Yeah, yes, mines were a problem.
Yeah, that's definitely a reality check right there. Sure. I mean, so that was one kind of close call, but there were many others. Sorry, I just turned my video off just because you kept dropping out a little bit. So I think that's maybe helped. I got a note here saying, early on, problem with authority figures, imprisoned by border police. Tell me, does that all connect?
Man, I was in prison 13. Yeah, man, listen, it's like if you're trying to find a guy that is not going to give in to corruption and just comply with people wanting to be corrupt, you're looking at him. I didn't say it because I was trying to be virtuous and win some award. I just was not willing to do anything when I sensed people were being corrupt. I was willing to follow all the rules, but 13 times, Robin, I was in prisons, literally the prisons, not just guns in my face, and which a lot of the military in some places did, but 13 times in prison. The first possible, hey man, a place like Equatorial Guinea, I'd read so much about this place being a military controlled, autocratic, nobody moves, nobody goes anywhere without the government knowing about it, place. And I arrive outside Barter. I go to one of the policemen. Imagine, I'm going as a friendly guy. I greet the policeman alongside the road. I'm approaching him. I ask him on the map, where's the route for me to go to Cameroon? Because, of course, I'm trying to follow this coastal area, and it doesn't show any proper roads or any clear access to Cameroon.
Yeah.
That guy he had me by my shirt within 20 seconds, just pulling me. Pulled him to where some of his colleagues were. They got more excited. They asked me where I was from. South African white guy to some people really meant only one thing. And yeah, there I was in the back of their van on the way to the police station in Barter itself and in prison for the day. I was shouting out through the prison door, the big, thick metal ones you'd see in movies. I was shouting through the little hole to the guy sitting behind the desk and begging him to call my embassy so they could clear the fact that I wasn't a mercenary or somebody there to assassinate their president. They let me go at the end of that day. So that was the first time I had a problem with authorities, Robin. But please don't read into the fact that there was 12 more to come.
Yeah, but I also think that did you find that changed your approach then? Did you in further interactions with authority, you were kind of like, okay, I can see where this can go pretty quickly. I'm going to alter the way that I respond to how people...
No, Robin, the places, like, I mean, if I think of them now, you just made me think now, could I have changed the way I approach people? No, I was always friendly. I have few secrets that I use in trying to break down barriers with people. You can't change the belief somebody has in their mind of you and the judgment they have of you off the cuff.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately what you have to deal with. And that bothered me. That bothered me initially. But when you accept that and you say, how do I then just get him to change his actions and get him to think slightly differently. He's not going to change his belief, but maybe he'll change and warm up to you. I wasn't always successful, but I just tried to smile. I tried to always learn the language of the country that I was in. It was very difficult in some of the Arabic countries. Religion is a problem. It was a very, very difficult time globally. Al-Qaeda captured me twice in Algeria. As much as I could have been the charming, bicycle riding, friendly South African, they didn't care in some places, all because of my religion and my skin color. And that was okay. I had to understand that, you know. So I know, Robin, to answer your question, I think I was more conscious of it. I think I was nervous when I approached some authority, but I tried to keep to the similar rule that I wasn't hiding anything, Robin. I wasn't afraid of them finding anything. I was an innocent guy trying to do something special on my bicycle.
Yeah. Tell me, so I have a little note here about getting held hostage, but I didn't realize that you were actually held by the Taliban as well. Tell me about that experience. How long did that go on for?
Not the Taliban. It was Al-Qaeda.
Oh, my mistake. Sorry.
Sects that were in. No, I mean, you only learn about. I mean, they similar ilk of people, I guess. But it's an education. You know, I wasn't too well versed in Islam and in the Muslim faith and people that I got to meet, especially in the Maghreb part of Africa. I mean, there's friendly Muslim places like Morocco, for example. Tunisia was. We know what happened in Tunisia after my bicycle trip. So you would presume that people were just humans like you and me. But in some places like Algeria, in the rural parts, if you went through Libya, in some of those parts outside Sirte, I was attacked by people on the border of Eritrea and Sudan, where there's some rural Islamic sects, and one of them being led by Al-Qaeda in some of these places. I wasn't aware of it. I was naive. I'd arrived in this little town at sunset, and it was one of the big mistakes. I told myself I would never arrive in a town at sunset and have people see me. And then obviously the news spread about me arriving, which it did. I arrived in a marketplace, and usually a marketplace was a place where you came to South Africa and you were at a marketplace, you would usually find that it was females, and we'll call them gogos. They aren't all grandmothers, but they're the trustworthy people. You could go to them and say, hey, listen, I have a problem, and you could trust them. It wasn't some wheeler dealer on the street corner. And I thought the same. I spoke to some of the ladies that were managing the stalls. Eventually, guys came up to me. I still try to keep positive, believing that they were trying to help me. They were aggressive. I softened them up, told them I'm just trying to find accommodation. Before I knew it, I was in the marketplace, 20, 50 stalls down. Wow, man, the one guy in front was pulling my bicycle, and I couldn't release his hand from the front of the bicycle. Eventually, more guys were holding onto the bicycle. It became like a mob. And there was a point in the market where there was a sharp right turn, and it was well lit up with those bright lights in the market. And then I didn't know what to do. I was pulling everything I had to keep my bicycle from going down another alley. And from the left-hand side, it was about 10 of these military police guys piled into these guys with their rifles and their batons. These guys scattered, and the police got me. They took me back to their police vans who were outside the market, took me to the police station, where I sat for a few hours, actually. They went to find the governor and the head of police in that region of Algeria, and nobody could speak English. They had the governor sitting inside the police station, busy telling me through a translator that, have I ever heard of Al-Qaeda? He said, because those were the people that lead Al-Qaeda in their village. Those people had just caught me. Do I realize what danger I was in? And then, obviously I was being grumpy because I was being held in the police station, but obviously relieved that these guys had saved me. But Robin, it's just then a wake-up call, that these people had, man, it was, I could see now. I mean, when I look back, I feel dumb. I feel ridiculous. I feel stupid. I feel so naive that I was willing to get taken away. These guys were smaller than me. I could have taken on the 3 or 4 that originally pulled me aside. But wow, just realized that there are people that are that fanatical, and it's not everywhere in the world. Islam and the people that follow Islam, 99% are great. It's just the ludicrousy that fanatics have. So, I mean, that was a scenario that I think I started being aware of more so. But then towards the town of Assab on the other rural end of Algeria towards Tunisia, I'd gone through another village, arrived in a similar scenario where people were aggressive.
Yeah.
And then they were outside this little coffee shop that I was busy chanting, and they were singing these slogans of anti-America, anti-Britain. I had pinned on my shirt, and people that go on my website and a lot of photos in my book, you'll see there's a South African flag pinned to my shirt. Robin, I didn't do it because I was all patriotic.
Yeah, yeah.
I did it so I could show people I wasn't a son of Tony Blair or George Bush. I was an innocent South African. These guys eventually had the shopkeeper close up his shop. The shopkeeper had to take me up his building and hide me away on top of the 3rd floor roof of his building. And then he lied to the people and told them that I'd left through the back door. And I slept that evening on top of his building in the open.
Wow.
So that these guys wouldn't find me. Yeah. So, I mean, listen, there's bad people in the world. And Algeria still, out of every country, 34 of them that I passed through with my bicycle, Algeria is still the place that stole my heart. My favorite country of the entire journey.
What did you love about it?
There were a few moments that had me understand the pureness of some people. I had arrived, that first innkeeper that I'd arrived near the town of Sirt. Man, I stood there in his little shop. He had a shop, little coffee shop, and then a bakery at the bottom, and then his house was on top. And he let me sleep there that night. And I've always had a dream as an adult growing up that I wanted to have a family and have children. And man, we sat there, and with our broken Arabic and English, we spoke about our love for our families and the desire to have children, with his kids running around and sitting on my lap and just being so blown away by me, the cyclist from South Africa, being there. And that was the first moment where I had this like love. Other places I didn't have that love. I didn't have that absoluteness, that feeling that these people genuinely are good. And then there were just places where people looked after me, man. They risked themselves. That shopkeeper closing his shop.
Yeah.
Yes, he risked his whole livelihood, his family for me. No, he didn't have to. The only country that I genuinely can tell you that I didn't want to get stamped out of, as I was at the border post to Tunisia, on top of that huge mountain range, the only country that I thought maybe I could stay another day or two. I like the people so much. Every other country, for all the travelers out there watching this, I know that you've also had it where you're relieved when you get that stamp on your passport saying, au revoir, I'm out of here. You're relieved. That country, Algeria, I wasn't.
That's great. I've got one other thing here. It's interesting, like you had so many hectic stories you already brought up there, but there's one that popped in my mind when I was doing a bit of research about being held hostage by rebels in Liberia, and actually the person who was in charge of kind of keeping you was actually quite young, like a 12-year-old, I think you said. I don't know if that's the right place, but do you mind telling that story?
Yeah, people ask me, what should I prepare and do for a journey that you've got coming up or planning for? I always tell people, get going. Like there's 99% people who don't push away from the harbor wall. Their boats stay in harbors all the time. For me, I wasn't aware of the war that was in Liberia. The people that are listening and watching your podcast will have watched the movie Blood Diamond. They will know about the war that was there. The movie was made 8 years after when I'd cycled through Liberia. The war was in full swing. I Yes, I was naive. I'd heard about, there was a South African reporter, Nick Botma. He was one of the only two people, him and a Japanese guy, that were supplying the world the photos of the civil war in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Nick wrote a mail back to me. His words were almost verbatim. He said to me, "You will not make it out alive." He said, "You will not make it out alive out of Liberia." And I still went. I cycled out of Ivory Coast into the country. And then the following morning, it was the first morning in Liberian territory where I slept in like a coffee plantation. So it was all quiet and no trauma. When I say trauma, I mean people hassling me.
Yes.
I'd gone through a few villages and seen kids holding guns. And I thought, oh, Liberia. Ah, I've heard about kids holding guns. And when I say kids, I'm talking about 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I had cycled for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then through a village. I tried to cycle away from these guys chasing me, couldn't cycle fast enough, tackled me off the bicycle. And 2 minutes later, I was against a wall, being kicked by this little 12-year-old that had originally tackled me off the bicycle. My bicycle being ransacked. Some of the boys with their guns standing around me. The knives that the boys had been stabbed into the wall alongside me, and they were so high on drugs. It was an 8-hour experience, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah.
The first few hours, they ransacked the bicycle, going through everything that I had. And Robin, I tell people how I try to be positive. I genuinely can tell you I didn't have big plans. The only thought in my mind was, they will have to see that you're a good person. And if they have any 1 ounce of humanity, they'll let you go. Once they found my South African passport, those guys were so high on drugs. The one guy, a younger guy, the leader was about 18 years old. The boy that had tackled me off the bicycle was like around 12, a smallish boy. And then there was a middle 15-year-old boy that was very loud and verbose. And that was the guy that just turned the hostage taking into where I just realized it was out of my hands. I had really believed that I was going to let them see I was a good human being.
Yeah.
I wasn't aggressive, didn't make eye contact. This boy started talking to the people around him after he found my passport, and he was talking to them saying he was going to gut me. It was something that this group had done regularly, and if you Google it, people can research it. It's the Model Rebel Group, MODEL. They were the group that had captured me on the eastern part of Liberia, and they had usually captured older rebel people, the Lurd rebel, LURD, soldiers, and gutted them. And he wanted to do that to me. So, after about 4 hours of them now taking me into this prison cell, he had become so impatient, so high on drugs, he just wanted to take me outside and gut me. And then I was packing my bicycle out little bit by little bit, and I had no strategy. I'd love to say that I had a plan. I was praying, and I was praying very, very intensely, man. I'm religious, but I'm not a pray to God to get him to be my exit out of a tough situation. I've never been in that scenario. So, I was just praying to say, listen, come on, we can't have a bad ending like this, to God. And when I realized this guy was asking the guys to take me outside to gut me, that's when I'd given up. It was 26th of February, 2004. And I gave up. I just thought, wow, man, if I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go with a bang. I'm going to take some people with me. They're not going to have what they wanted. I'm not a walkover. And I worked out a plan of how I was going to take out a few people. And then what saved me was literally a magazine. It was a Time magazine. It had our old president, Thabo Mbeki, on the cover. They recognized, they spoke about him. And when I speak about it now, it's like a dream. And immediate connection. He told me it was a friend of his, and obviously it wasn't a friend. The president wasn't a friend of his, and I kept sanity. I let sanity prevail. I realized I made a mistake by not agreeing with him. just like I'm nervous now when I think about it, because I thought I'd buggered up. I stood next to him, and then I was looking at this photo of my president, Thabo Mbeki, and sanity help, and my brain was not too foggy. I remember being very, very precise in my thinking, saying, connect with this guy, connect with him, connect with him. Eventually, him and I were laughing at this image. I can't remember why I continued laughing with him, but he was pointing at the beard and the moustache that had gray hairs in it, and it looked comical because it was so close up. And he just, once I walked back to my bicycle, he just out of the blue just said, "Go before we kill you." Out of the blue, like after 8 hours. And I mean, that's obviously the Reader's Digest version, but just when I tell you this now, I feel the relief. I remember that relief. I didn't look at anybody, Robin. I didn't make eye contact. Yes, I pushed through this crowd. The guys that wanted to stab me, I pushed through that little crowd through the doorway, climbed on my bicycle. I still didn't think I was able to go. I clipped my feet into the cleats, and it made this horrible sound that I thought was the sound of people stabbing me. Up this hill, and I still didn't think I'd got away alive. And then I looked back, and then these guys were all busy waving at me, like as the sun was busy setting, man. And then I didn't, until about 2 weeks later, I only had enough money to pay for internet cafe 2 weeks later, and I was able to share that with my newspaper article. And it was the first time my girlfriend also found out, and everybody found out what had happened to me. And only subsequent to that I realized like how lucky I was. I mean, that was probably the closest that on that journey that I came to death. I didn't think I was going to die. I really believed the 26th of February was my gravestone's date, So yeah, and I mean, that was probably the lowest on the trip. Some dangerous moments, but that was the one where I knew I was out of control, and I'm grateful I made it.
Thanks for sharing that, Riaan. That was that must have been unreal as an experience as it was happening. I can only imagine that. And I'm sure that came back to you afterwards for many times. Like that's a pretty scary situation to be in.
It is, man, and I understand trauma. When I think of it, Fasti used to say to me, "Why don't you speak about it?" And I had like corporate events, and these guys booked me, and of course they're not booking me just for the candy floss and lollipop stuff. And then that would be like a 2-minute thing. And I was thinking, and I'm not a sissy, but I wasn't telling people the story, I just realized it's exactly that. It's people must share, man. The best way to deal with anything that's eating you up inside, tell people about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So low points, this is probably a bit of a bad segue, but high points, you I don't know if this was before or after this moment, but you said at some point that a real high moment for you was getting to Egypt and seeing the pyramids.
Hey, there's everybody that's been following your podcast and listening to people in adventurous spaces' lives. There is a culmination of effort that you put into your daily existence, to your short-term goals, and then those long-term goals. For me, I couldn't believe that I'd cycled. Anybody that's ever gone through Giza, the part where the pyramids are, the Giza pyramids. I mean, when you come through that area, a lot of buildings, and you almost make a sharpish right turn before you come to the parking lot, and then the pyramids just go boom. The undeniable shape and everything that you imagined actually physically in front of you. And while I'm telling you that story, I can remember smelling it and thinking, "Oh, you're kidding me. It's impossible. I didn't get you. It's impossible." Riaan Manser did not cycle and make it all the way to the pyramids. Remember, that was it was just a validation, Robin, of what I thought was this monstrous task of getting around Africa and then arriving at the pyramids, Giza pyramids, and saying, "This is unbelievable." It was one of the moments where I thought, "Hey, pal, you're doing pretty well. Keep going. Keep going. You're going to do this."
Especially, I can't imagine the emotion. It's like anytime you have a huge task to achieve, I think there's a proportional how good it feels to achieve that goal versus how hard you've worked then. I mean, that must have been unbelievable, the emotions that you went through then.
Yeah, I've been Indiana Jones my whole life, and I tell people this, and it maybe resonate with a lot of people in your circle and in your tribe. We all think you know the pyramids of Egypt. You all. We've seen so many photos, documentaries. It's almost as if you've been there. The Taj Mahal,
Yeah.
equally so.
Yeah.
And then you realize you've never been there. You've only seen it. You've only seen it on TV.
Uh-huh.
I had that realization come to me that there's an ocean between seeing it on TV and smelling the dust around the Giza pyramids.
Amazing. I guess it's like the halfway mark. You get to those pyramids, it's at the top. Is there anything on the way back down on the second half? I guess it's sort of mentally and emotionally you're on the down slope. Like you're heading, it's easy. You can roll. In my mind, I'm assuming, but you've got momentum then, you're heading back. Was there anything on that second half of the loop that really stuck in your mind as
I mean, Robin, but to have a chip on my shoulder, I mean, we obviously just brushing over with broad strokes to think there weren't other highlights. I mean, there were, in Tunisia, there was a beautiful place that still holds very, very dear to me. Well, dear would be a bit of a stretch of the imagination. That was special to see Al Jem, the Colosseum lookalike, a place they shot some of gladiator scenes with the tigers jumping out. They shot it in that gladiator. To get to a place, and for the life of me, I think I'll remember it as I start telling you, but about 90 kilometers to the east of Tripoli, there is a place called, I forget now, I thought I'd remember it, but if you Google it, it's a beautiful, beautiful 2,100-year-old city that the French have uncovered. It has been uncovered, I think, 25% of the city. Beautiful artworks and obviously temples that were from the Roman times. You only can understand history if you've stood in those places. So those were other highlights. I genuinely think that me circumnavigating Africa would have also been a little bit hollow if I didn't do what I usually like to do, is do things completely, and that's go to the highest point. So that being Kilimanjaro, climb the mountain,
okay, wow.
And then go to the lowest point. So I also went to the lowest point in Africa, the lowest you can stand. That's nearly as low below sea level as the Dead Sea, and that was a place called Lake Assal in Djibouti.
Okay, interesting. I'm curious, was that lake also saline, or was that just pure coincidence that the Dead Sea is very salty? I'm just wondering if there's those low level lakes, or was it drinkable?
No, it was absolutely not. No, it was definitely saline. That's a very, very big salt farm.
Okay.
That they have in those plains. My battery was dying on my little video camera, and I recorded as I was standing there and just had arrived to just salt plains all behind me. And I told myself with a lot of spirit and promises that I was going to swim in Lake Assal, but then I chickened out. My body was so full of scratches that if anybody's ever swum in the Dead Sea, man alive, your body would. I chickened out. So, what a beautiful place. I mean, I fell about 10 kilometers before that and cracked my collarbone and cut my elbow open, maybe 4 inches gash to the bone that I had on my elbow. And I was able only to sort of bandage that up. So I hobbled in there to Lake Assal with the holding thumbs that I would make it to Djibouti city, which I luckily did. But those are other highlights. I mean, going back down, I like it that you make the joke, Robin, that it was downhill. It's a joke I make all the time. Halfway coming down from Cairo was all downhill. So, I mean, just believe everybody that says the second half was easy.
So you arrived back in South Africa then. I'm guessing you had a pretty different audience than when you left.
Man, it made me so emotional. I didn't want to overthink it. I had no money in the bank. There was no promises of this instant fame and fortune that every single person in every single, and I can say it now, every single mail I get today, and in the last 10 years, somebody saying to me, oh, they'd like to do what I do, they'd like to do what I do. Every single person wants to become famous. Every single one. They don't do it for they're not doing it for the purity. It's a vehicle to having followers and being able to get rich from it.
Yeah.
And that's not what it should be. I had nothing, Robin. When I cycled that last 2,000 kilometers, 2,700 kilometers in my own country, with people knew me, man. I mean, I'd drive on the freeways and people would just be hanging out car doors and everybody knew about me. When I arrived at the waterfront, I'd like to tell you that I had zero expectation, but I was hoping there would be more than just 5 people that said goodbye. So I was holding thumbs. And then, Robin, typical South African, how we would play ourselves down and you play down any achievement that we possibly had. I still tell my girlfriend that they had rented some of the crowd. And some of the people, if you've ever been to the waterfront, were caught, unfortunately, on the wrong side of this electronic bridge that you have to go over. Yeah. And they were all caught on one side. But, Robin, it was lovely to see all the people to come celebrate me coming back after that historic journey.
Yeah, it must have been. I can only imagine. So tell me about meeting Nelson Mandela. There's a photo of you with Nelson Mandela. What was that like? Was that after the circumnavigation of Africa?
It was 6 days later. Yeah, it was 5-6 days later. He had Mr. Mandela had watched me on TV.
Okay.
He tried to call me among all my other friends. So you had me and wishing and saying to me, listen, well done. We didn't think you would do this, and well done. We didn't know what you did. It was a lot of footage I'd never seen. So when I watched that program myself, it was like you'd have 60 seconds that you'd find in Australian TV or American TV. It was that Sunday night program that Mr. Mandela also watched. And he called me just that evening to try and get hold of me. And I wasn't answering my phone. And eventually one of his people got hold of me and asked me if I could come visit him that following week, the Thursday morning. So I spent the Thursday morning with him after I'd got back. And I mean, there's no human being that walks the planet that is God, because God is God. But there are human beings that walk this planet that have a godly feel. And Mr. Mandela was this incredible, incredible person that had learned so many lessons in his life that he didn't have to tell you what those were. It oozed from him.
Yeah.
You meet people who've experienced things in life. You sense it, you feel it. The greatest gift that he non-verbally had me understand that day was, you need to have any person you come into contact with, let them feel like the prince in the room. Let them feel like the elevated one. Let them feel like the special one, not you.
Yeah.
Your time will always be some other space. He made me feel like the most important person he's ever met in his entire life. That's saying something, Robin.
That's amazing. It must have been an incredible experience. And also, not to sidetrack too much, but I'm guessing, I don't claim to be an expert, but the context of South Africans being so united by sport and by physical activities, I can see how Mr. Mandela would have seen such potential in you, and how that can unite the nation as well, right? Everyone, this is something that we as a nation cumulatively achieved through this man doing this thing that no one else has ever done before, in the same way as rugby is so important.
Yeah. I mean, it's like our country needs, our honeymoon in South Africa is over. People have people used to love us, and everybody, depending on which divide you were on, left or right, you saw things unfolding in our country, and you were probably more educated as the outside public about our problems. Um, and Mr. Mandela was that beacon for us. He was the voice of sanity. Yeah, he was the voice of sanity in our country. And you rightly say that he did represent something and could see something in my journey. So for sure, the point I was making was, it's so funny how full circle my life has gone now. 20 years after meeting him, I I wrote my first children's book about 3 years ago, and then we've got the trilogy now. They all follow my journeys: the Iceland circumnavigation, the Madagascar circumnavigation, the Africa circumnavigation. All these historic world-only journeys I've turned into children's books now. Mr. Mandela gave me a gift as I was leaving his house. He knew that I liked the speeches that had been written and speeches, and he gave me a book. And in the book, beautiful, beautiful in his handwriting, of course. And he praised me. But in the end of his message, he said, "What you have done will inspire the youth of the continent." And hey, it's just so phenomenal how I travel around Africa. It's a monster continent. The children in the poorest and in the wealthiest parts of our continent are always invigorated and inspired by what I did on the bicycle as a South African. And Mr. Mandela's words, prophecy coming to truth 20 years later.
And also such incredible words from such a respected person as well. That must have held so much weight. Yeah, amazing.
It is. I mean, and you do it in your own small way, Robin. I want to tell you from stuff that I've looked at that you've done, it's when you encourage others. There's nothing better. You never know when those great, powerful words of encouragement actually land. They do. They change the way people perceive the next step and the next step and the next step. And that's what Mr. Mandela was good at.
I just think there's so many amazing people out there, people who aren't even trying to tell their own story, and that's actually often some of the people who I enjoy talking to the most is someone you find who doesn't even know what a podcast is. And they just have such wisdom. So it's been such an amazing learning curve for me, and trying to absorb some of the stories and the knowledge and the wisdom. I have to say that wasn't what I anticipated would be one of the benefits necessarily. I guess I didn't think about it too much. I just thought I'm going to start. But yeah, I feel like my perspective on the world has actually changed somewhat from all of the, I guess, borrowing some of the experiences of other people through their stories, I'd say.
Maybe we can do a 2.0 on our interview, and I'll interview you.
I would love that. Although I never want to talk about myself too much, so it always feels a little bit uncomfortable. But yeah, maybe next time I'm in South Africa, it would be great to catch up with you.
Good man.
If we have time still, I would love to ask you some more questions, if that's all right. I mean, this is
please. I'm all yours.
Okay, thank you, Riaan. This is just the beginning. Then I guess, although it's 2 years of your life, it was the beginning of a huge change in the sort of trajectory of your life. So, how many years was it then before you decided, you've circumnavigated the African continent, but there's a big part of Africa, one of the biggest islands in the world, that hasn't had your mark on it yet. So when did the idea of Madagascar pop up in your mind?
I'd love to. I like trying to the dots, and I'd love to just give you the seamless. I've been thinking about it my whole life. I hadn't. Robin, Mr. Mandela said goodbye to me in such a weird way. He had said, "Good luck, my boy, off you go." He waved me as I was getting into the car, and then he shouted and he said something. He said, "Don't rest on your laurels, my boy." And I was thinking, like, what a weird thing, eh? Like, rather just tell me good luck, go for it. But he was saying to me, sort of to the tune of, "Don't get cocky because you think you have," but in a nice way. He was laughing. And it was advice.
Yes.
And while I wrote the Africa book, and I put my life into that book, and I'm proud of it. I mean, that book is, I kept myself busy. Of course, I tried to pay some of my bills. Yeah. I was reasonably comfortable, but I knew that I needed to go and do something and follow Mr. Mandela's advice of not resting on my laurels,
Yeah.
and that I'd done something great now. And I'd gone to the Explorers Club in New York, and Jane Goodall and I being the guest speakers one after another. I was getting on some big stages, around the world, and I could have probably tried to milk that for all it was worth, but I felt I needed to not rest on the laurels. And the chunk of Gondwana land, big parcel of Pangaea, was Gondwana land was Madagascar, that obviously used to lay on the eastern part of the continent of Africa, the world's fourth largest island, monstrous piece of earth, fourth world country, no rescue, ocean rescue at the press of a button.
Yes.
And I had heard that people were trying to circumnavigate it by kayak. And I'd read that these guys were solid championship paddlers that were attempting this but weren't able. In typical South African, I thought, I'm going to go give it a go. I'm a tough guy, man. We don't say ouch or ana or hey, this is a bit too tough too quickly. It's in our DNA to say, let's try harder, let's try more, let's try more. We don't like giving up. And it was literally, my wife still laughs. She says how I was reading that one article about one of the paddlers, and the guy had spoken about his foot nearly getting amputated. And I remember turning to her in a little bit of jest and in a bit of joking manner, said to her, gee, this guy's such a sissy. And obviously he wasn't, this guy was going to lose his foot. But I just thought, nah, man, come on, let me get out there and do this. And Robin, in short, I started with the intention of trying to get around the island in 6 months.
Yes.
The 5,500 kilometers. And eventually did it in 1 year. All in one go.
I lost you again, Riaan. Sorry.
Robin. No, sure. I think I was just telling you just roughly the time it had taken. I headed to Madagascar with the intention of circumnavigating that big island in 6 months.
Okay.
And then 5,500 kilometers later, but this time also to my girlfriend's dismay, 1 year later, I was able to get home. But this time I did it differently. This time I did go to partners. I went to some sponsors that term them. I've never called a sponsor a sponsor. I always used to talk to somebody face to face, eyeball to eyeball in the good old days before all the technology. Shook their hand and I said to them, listen, I've got big ambitions. 99% of the people will tell you not to back me. I have a track record. I've had on my bicycle trip very, 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 very good reasons to come back home and tell you I did well enough. But trust me, I'm going to do this journey around Madagascar as well. And then I had a sponsor. Can you believe it? The guys backed me. And during 2008, I was circumnavigating the island. I was able to fly Fasti, my girlfriend, to the island to come visit. She saw me twice on that trip. It was just totally different from my bicycle journey.
Yeah.
Only 5 times I landed up in prison. So I was improving my time behind bars. But gee whiskers, that was a journey where I understood loneliness. I had arrived at a time when the country was getting overthrown by the mayor of the capital city, Antananarivo, was a DJ with huge following across the island. And he started burning down the president's TV stations, radio stations, his shops, people that were allies to him, burning down their houses and torturing people. They shot 90 people dead outside the palace in Antananarivo. And man, I was trying to get around this island. And eventually I made the call that I was not going to interact with people for about 3 months. I didn't interact with any locals. Stayed away from people.
Wow.
Self-sufficient. But made it around, man. I tell people I've got all 10 fingers, all 10 toes to show for it.
That must have been so wild. I think there's a double whammy, right? Like keeping your distance from people for your own potential, I guess, avoiding any conflict or any situations like that. But that must have taken, you said it was hard mentally. Did you
Mm.
did you learn any kind of mental techniques or anything to help you through that isolation, that loneliness? Because I mean, ultimately, what are they saying now? There's like a loneliness epidemic happening, certainly across America, and I'm sure across many parts of the world right now. So how did you cope?
Yeah, yeah. I think you need to have. There's a saying that I use regularly, and I don't know where I picked it up. And I hate to say that, I was thinking about it, or I'd thought it up, and I'm now sharing it with people while I think of it. Your attitude at the beginning of a task dictates your success more so than your attitude during it.
Hmm.
You can't tell me that you're going to. If I went into war with you, Robin, and you and I were shoulder to shoulder, I need you to look in my eyes. I need to look in your eyes, and we both need to be willing to die.
Hmm.
Can't talk about it while we're on the battle swinging the swords. I was willing to do whatever it took. So when I did have my moments, I used to say, Riaan, suck this up, pal. I was hard on myself. And it's a South African thing.
Hmm.
We come from a heritage of people that came from tough, tough places. Our ancestors came to a South Africa that had nothing. The heritage that people don't know about our our heritage in South Africa is people that lived through the depression, people that were in concentration camps. We come from a tough breed of people.
Yeah.
There was no place. My boys are growing up with that mentality. So I'd love to tell you that was entirely the gorilla beating his chest, but I will in jest also tell you, hey, I used to cry myself to sleep, Robin. There were times I'd lay on the southern part of Madagascar. It's got these huge cliff faces that I would have to land my kayak against, sometimes in almost darkness.
Hmm.
And I would pull my kayak up onto these rock shelves, and I wouldn't know how I did it and survived. I'd pull up and I'd be so high on adrenaline. I'd pull my kayak up. I'd be so hungry. I'd feed myself with some of the fish that I'd caught. I would sit on the beach just hearing the surf smashing, smashing. I'd be overcome with so much emotion as I laid down on my little rubber mat. I didn't put up a tent or anything, didn't know where high tide was, if I'd be washed off the rocks. And I would cry myself to sleep, eh? I never told people that I would cry myself to sleep with and I was enthusiastic in those teary sessions. I wasn't just sniffing away with the tear dropping off. Hey, I sobbed, eh? And it was all out of like a little bit of self-pity and loneliness. But in the mornings, Robin, I stood up. I can tell you, I felt like a warrior.
Yeah.
I smashed through surf. So how do you deal with it? I always encourage people. I hate being a judge and saying, hey, pal, suck up your problems, suck it up. That I don't know where people are. But I do encourage them to embrace some robustness. If you're going through some difficulty, stop avoiding that conversation.
Hmm.
Listen to me when I tell you you need to be robust. You have to be. People, your ancestors went through
Yeah.
such phenomenal hard things. I encourage you to embrace some robustness. And then secondly, hey man, you can be emotional. Deal with it. Crying is a beautiful thing of releasing. I
Yeah.
don't know what you release, but you release
Something.
some good stuff gets out of you.
Yeah. It's kind of some kind of therapy. But
Yeah,
I think it's
it
right. You were saying
definitely is.
about like if you mentioned this before, but if you contain emotions, if you keep it in, then that's internalizing. It's going to come out somewhere. So it's not good for you. So I guess in some way it's some physical release of whatever
It is.
that is. So bawling your eyes out, echoing in the cliffs is that's
So
therapy.
you probably with a fly on the wall now that you speak like that. You're describing one of the scenarios very well there, Robin.
So I want to come back to Madagascar, but you brought up a point there which I think is interesting about family life and that kind of process of trying to raise kids in the modern world, right? Like I feel like that's an interesting thing, right? Like the time that you crafted obviously your character was crafted before you did these things, but I think in a world of constant distractions and also easy dopamine, how do you go about bringing up your kids to have that same fire, right? That desire to do hard things and suffer. Like, do you you just make them do hard stuff? What do you think?
You touch on something. I mean, we're chatting about parenting. Father's Day is coming up. These are conversations men need to have with each other. We feel judged, man. The men are listening. For the women, please forgive me having a little bit of a man moment here, but men are judged. You know, you're the villain. You know, we have to do the performing at all levels, and women know this, how we feel. We feel responsibility. It's God given, this responsibility. We feel I'm an ambitious father. I get judged on many levels. Being in the public eye, people presume a lot of things about me. Usually 99.9% of those people and their opinions are people who don't know me. I have dreamt of being a great father, Robin. I've dreamt of doing the right things, and I fail daily. I have never, ever, ever expected anything from my boys. My boys are wonderful, wonderful young men, and that's where I'm taking them to respect women, to be the leader in the family, to take responsibility. It's a big thing, but more so out of responsibility, take accountability. They don't have to be the next UFC fighter. They don't have to be the strongest man in the building. They need to be an example for other men. If I can bring up those boys, I mean, I've shot the lights out, man. I'm styling. So to answer you, no, I don't have pressure on my boys to be that. I think they sometimes feel it. My older boys at in grade 2 now, you know, my children's books are bandied about. The kids pulled them out at school. They know who James Manser is. They probably put pressure on him, you know, and I think he probably wants to follow in his dad's footsteps because people expect that from him around him, but not from his dad. I want my son to be happy, man. So I don't know if you have children, but I think we all want to be good dads, and I'm finding my way. I usually have conversations with other fathers, and usually fathers that have been through where I'm right now with a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I learn from them. I'm an open book. I'm willing to take criticism. I'm willing to get styled and educated by other fathers who've done it before me.
Yeah, I'm not a parent right now, but I've got to say, hats off. It looks like a very, very tough job. You know,
No, man, it's the greatest gift, Robin. It's the greatest gift.
Yeah.
Greatest gift.
Yeah. So after Madagascar, it seemed like there was a bit of a shift slightly in your focus. I mean, you went through these 2 challenges, circumnavigating obviously in a boat and then on a bicycle. And they were very difficult, but also then you went through, like you said, that extreme loneliness. It seems like from some of the challenges you did after that, there was a bit of a shift in your focus towards team events, or at least towards shared events. Was that kind of inspired by the extreme loneliness you felt when you were in Madagascar?
I mean, if we were being sane about things that I think affect decision making, or surely it could have been. I still come back to that 20-second decision making process that I think I've fallen victim to often. We had Fusty and we had gone to Greenland, and we had done some beautiful East Greenland traveling. I had a journey planned across the ice cap. I did want something out of my comfort zone. You know, we know Africa, and places that we would find comfortable, others would not be able to survive in, and fair enough. We grow up here, but I knew nothing about ice. I mean, literally, I'd never seen snow.
Yeah.
And in Greenland, I had planned this journey. I found some funding. I was professional about it, hopefully put some money in the bank. And then the ludicrousness of Riaan Manser again. We're taking off out of Keflavik, which is the harbor, the airport area of Iceland, and looking down at that beautiful coastline. So we'd spent like 2 weeks in Iceland as well. Robin, I changed my mind. I looked down at the coast. I looked at Fusty and I said, no, man, no. I think I'm going to be offering a friend of mine the opportunity to paddle with me. Dan is the guy that did the Iceland circumnavigation with me,
Yes.
and he made history with me as the only person in history to paddle in a double kayak. The thing that people don't know about Dan is that he's got cerebral palsy, and he, at the best of times, would not even be able to paddle normally on his own. And yeah, we were going to try and make this history. And I went back, we'd flown, we'd landed back in Cape Town. I called Dan and I said to him, listen, let's meet for a coffee. And we, like that same day, we met for a coffee. And I said to him, listen, it's been weighing on me. I'd like to offer you a chance. Would you like to, try to do this with me? And at the coffee meeting, he agreed. And that was when we decided to do Iceland. So it probably was the fact that I wanted some company. But when I look back at it, Robin, yes, we all grow, and
Yeah.
I felt I wanted to do something for somebody else.
Yep.
It didn't land up being the romantic ending that I wanted. Dan and I aren't really friends today. It didn't land up being this beautiful journey that I was hoping it would be. The conflict was just too huge. And but my goodness me, in the same breath, one of the greatest things I've ever done, hey? Dan and I getting around Iceland, when you're literally talking about a handful of people that have ever done it in history. And for two African kids to go and do this, we did well. We deserve a pat on the back, hey? And I think that's what I was trying to do. Altruistically, I'd love to just tell you I was trying to do something good for somebody else.
Yeah. And I also think it's a very inspiring story. I was thinking about your whole arc of a story, which sounds funny. That's a funny expression, I guess. Call me a writer. But yeah, moving from personal success to also then including someone else who is perhaps more relatable in some capacity to many other people, right? You see, okay, if someone with cerebral palsy can do this, then why on earth can I not do it? And I think that is
Sure.
such an inspiring message to people when that traveled around, I'm sure.
No, Robin, very, very well spotted as well. I didn't overthink things, and it's just been. I mean, I can tell you this now with a chip on my shoulder and say I had no intention of being this this virtuous person standing and saying, "Look what I've done." I'd love to tell you that with a chip on my shoulder, but I never did it wanting to be recognized for somebody that had done that. But come on, inherently, every single one of us, we want to do good. And we do want to help others. We do want to see other people who don't have what you have prosper. So, I mean, I did. I wanted somebody else to have a chance. And your word, relatable, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, take somebody that I had many people who ran magazines globally, and they had outdoor magazines, and they would tell me, Riaan, when we interview you, please keep your stories to the subdued ones. We don't want to have extreme adventure. We just want to know about camping and what gear to use, etc. So you are right. Relatable. Wow. Lovely. Very well spotted.
Well, it's funny. This is a slight side note, but bear with me. But actually, my folks have sailed across the Atlantic. They actually sailed around the world for about 10, 15 years. That was like a long lifetime plan. So so there's adventure in my blood as well, I guess. But the thing I thought that was interesting about that is there is a level of relatability that when you've seen so many wild things and you've done something that's so different from everyone else's frame of normal reference, it can be hard sometimes. You see people kind of, it's like they can't even take in what they're being told because it's so different. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, I think my parents also had to kind of distill down some of their stories, because ultimately it can't be that interesting to people because it's just another planet almost, if that makes sense.
Man, I have some of my staff just tell me that you need to always prepare a runway.
Yeah.
So there's one of my slides in my Africa chat is I show them like the size of Africa, and then pretty shocked when you put China, USA, Europe,
Yep.
Britain,
Mm-hmm.
India, blah, blah, blah. You fit all of those into Africa. Then you say, whoa, this guy on a bicycle did do pretty well, circumnavigating. But I want to tell you the ultimate of ultimate stories where people didn't believe what I did. If you know where Mozambique is, to the northeast of our country
Yep.
on the
Yep.
coast,
Okay.
if you know that country,
Mm-hmm.
there's a capital city called Maputo. It's the last city before I go into or go through our border into South Africa. And I've only got 2,700 kilometers left of my 40,000 kilometer bicycle trip. I'm standing at a little shop where they're selling cool drinks. I have my bicycle outside the shop. I'm busy paying. And a guy walks in, a local Mozambican, and he asks me, is this your bicycle? So I say to him, yeah, it is my bicycle. He looks at me and he says, where have you cycled from? So I tell him, I've cycled from Cape Town. Now you can draw your finger around the coastline of Africa, all the way around the continent. I've come back down to Maputo. I've only got a small little stretch to go. He looks at me, and Robin, he looked at me as if, like, he gave me that look of, pal, you don't be an idiot. Don't be an idiot. I'm not born yesterday. Like, what are you trying to really, really take the Mickey out? Like, I mean, come on, pal. And he said to me, rubbish. There's no way you cycled from Cape Town. He thought I'd cycled that way up. Imagine I had left the bomb for him that I'd cycled the other way around. You are right. We need to be relatable. So I walked out of there with the guy still not believing that I'd cycled the other way from South Africa to Maputo because it was totally unrelatable for him.
Oh, funny. So,
Sure.
Speaking of relatability, then, I mean, obviously you had more continual conversation and connection with your now wife, Fasti. But did she also then, in some ways, do you find that it was a little difficult to relate some of the stories that you told her? Or was that just like she knows, she understands, because obviously you're so connected?
No. You've got, I mean, there's a bit of wisdom in your insight there. No, it was with a bit more time, I realized that she was also unaware. I think conversations we've had personally, when I've shared with her what the pain was, she tried to understand, but no, even for herself, it was just also not really relatable. Fusty's always been sporty and fit. But I guess that's probably what led to the next chapter, hey, where I'd included her in some monster journeys, and I'll share that with you now.
Yeah,
But
please. That was my next question. You read my mind.
But I have to tell you about relatability. When we were writing my children's books,
Yeah,
I had sat with my co-author Murray, and I said to him, Murray, man, you don't know how many. I mean, people don't know how many stories I've got. People are always surprised when they have me at as casual event, the children's birthday parties, and we're sitting around a big boma, a fireplace. People presume Riaan Manser is just going to be telling story after story after story, when normally I'm reserved and shy. I don't like telling my stories. I mean, I do it for a living. And the children's books, I said to Murray, what do we do? Like Murray said, just talk, share with me stories. I will be the judge of what is interesting, what's not interesting. And I mean, we had 10 times the amount of stories we wanted to share with the children. The one story yesterday, somebody reminded me of, he came up to me in a shopping center and he said to me, hey, nice to meet you. Took a photo, said to me, I read to my children the story, and their favorite one is of you cutting out the tungu fly larvae from your toes in Madagascar. And I thought, wow, this guy, what a memory. And I said, that nearly didn't make the book because I thought it was like a boring story for people. Man alive, I was thinking that story of a fly harvesting its larva and eating me bit by bit by bit was a boring story. So no, I try to be more relatable as I go.
It's funny how things stick in people's minds, right? But I guess that's definitely heebie-jeebies on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So it's relatable, but moving to your point of Fasti and her relatability, Robin, it was absolutely where it wasn't me coercing her and saying let's do something together. The stories that I tell about my life in the last 25 years, they're always so entertaining, but they double up in entertainment because they're all true. Everybody says, "How did you think of the ocean going rowing trips with her?" We were sitting, we were staring blankly at the TV at Kim Kardashian and her sisters and doing nothing, just vegetating, dogs lying on our laps and sitting in front of the fireplace at home doing nothing. And Fasti out of the blue said to me she wants to do something incredible in her life. And I didn't know what that meant. And then I interrogated her a little bit, asking, what do you mean? And she said she'd love it to understand, what I've experienced in my journeys thus far. And then she quickly came up with an idea of going to New York City. For the people from New York that are listening to this, they're going to love it. Because when you hear me again tell the story, you first won't understand what we did and what we achieved. But Fasti and I sat on the sofa. She said to me, can we go to New York City? I said to her, you bet, we will go to New York City. We're just going to do it my way. We're going to do it my way. I bought a small ocean rowing boat, Robin, and I researched that no humans had ever rowed from mainland Africa all the way to mainland North America. It's out of the trade winds. It was considered impossible. And Fasti and I rowed from Morocco. We climbed into that little rowing boat, 20 feet long, 3 feet wide. And we rowed through Canary Islands, through Bahamas, landed in Miami, the first big landfall on American soil. And then we rowed up the entire east coast of United States around Cape Hatteras, 6 months, 11,000 kilometers later, into New York City Harbor, finishing alongside the Statue of Liberty. The only people in history have ever done that. And we stayed together. She didn't kill me. I never thought of killing her, but she did own up to it that she thought of chopping my head off with one of the oars. And we got married after that. So 6 months, man, we made it. We made it 11,000 kilometers later.
And that is an absolute, I can contest to this. That is an absolute pressure test. Being on a boat, even one that's a bigger boat than the one that you were on, is you're going to find out very quick how whether you get along or not, because there's no other option, right? You've got to be in each other's space. And
people just address if there are any couples listening.
Yeah.
And please reach out. Fasti and I are super qualified. Relationship advice? Don't worry, we've dealt with it.
So tell me, I've got a few questions about this, like fishing, right? So you must have been. Were you dragging a line most of the time when you were going across? Because it's not like you can get support and you're not going to stop off at the supermarket on the way across there. Did you have like stocks of food as well, I would imagine? But were you just trying to pull up as many fish as possible from the ocean?
For sure. Madagascar had done a heck of a lot of fishing. I mean, it was phenomenal, the fish that I'd caught over there.
Okay.
Fasti still tells people, don't feel sorry for Riaan when you hear his year-long circumnavigation of Madagascar, because bottom line, it was a glorified fishing trip. But Robin, same idea. Just putting the rods, we put rod holders into our boat. We trawled usually 2 lines behind us. I think like only about a month into our trip did we land our first fish.
Wow.
Dorado usually follow. Our boats move very, very slowly. So in very windy conditions, if the wind's in the right direction, you would drift it maybe 1 knot or 2 knots. And then the fish stay underneath you, but we caught a lot of fish. But as a safety precaution, we had freeze-dried food,
okay,
the same stuff that astronauts eat. And we would, for the last hour of our rowing every single day, and that's after 10 hours of rowing,
yeah,
the last hour, we could not stop talking about the freeze-dried spaghetti bolognese we were about to have, or the chicken a la king. I mean, I got a healthy respect for people that eat freeze-dried food.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, we were in love with dinner, but we did eat a lot of fish. And for those that know our country, South Africa, we do something way better than jerky. We do biltong,
Yeah.
and we made some fish biltong, fish jerky. I mean, we'd
Amazing.
eat that. If you park next to our boat, some days our entire deck of our boat was just fish busy drying up.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it called? A mahi or a dorado? Did you say dorado? Is that the right word? They're pretty big fish.
Mahi.
Mahi.
That's right.
There's a lot of meat to process in one go. If you pull one of those on board. Yeah, that sounds fun. So
it was the largest fish that people out there'll see some clips on YouTube, but the one beautiful mahi that Fasti lifted, you see it was at night, and it astounds people when they see her grab it by the gills, and then she's dragging it out of the boat. And Fasti, she's a lawyer, an advocate, so a barrister in English terms. She's not a fisher lady, but she grabbed this fish by the gills and she lifted it up, and she's 177 meters tall, which is 5'11". She lifted that fish and it was as long as her, and it was maybe a 30 pound mahi, massive fish.
Amazing. That must have been a big celebratory moment. Yeah.
I was not allowed to put the lures back in the water after we had caught a big fish. Some of the men listening now, we don't know why. We just want to keep hunting.
Yeah, of course.
And Fasti would just say, no, thank you.
We have enough.
Lure out of the water. The one night we fell asleep, and my job was always to bring the lures in, and we had eaten dinner. We tied up everything in case a rogue waves, etc. Did everything. I forgot to bring the lure in. There goes the line, and it's making obviously the spinning sound, and the ratchet's going, and it wakes me up. Robin, I am so confused. I think it's like the world has ended. I think our boat is sinking. I don't know what that noise is. And obviously in my daze, I'm jumping out, I'm grabbing the rod, and I start reeling in. Here we sit with a huge, probably like a 200-pound mako shark that has taken the lure at night, coming alongside our boat. I mean, no, fishing was adventure. Hey? We caught a lot of fish for survival, but then sometimes also just a few other creatures that took hold of our lures behind our boat.
Wow. It must have been amazing as well, because I've not done any huge crossings. The longest I've done is like a 4-day passage across an ocean. And it's that moment, right, when you don't see any land, and it's such a empty place, the wildest place. Someone else actually told me once the wildest place they've ever been is the middle of the ocean, because there's just nothing there. It's just like there's just, apart from obviously occasionally you get visited by animals or fish, and it's those kinds of experiences that are quite remarkable. Do you have any encounters or anything that happened that was interesting in those times?
Yeah, of course we had 11,000 kilometers on the first ocean rowing trip, and then we crossed the Pacific as well, at least to Hawaii.
Yes,
but it's another thing. My career has really had me understand a lot of cliches people use quite liberally. The middle of nowhere, people say quite easily.
Yes.
Very, very easily. I was separated from the boat once when I'd gone swimming. The wind had picked up. I was only in my little gray underpants, the same ones I used across the whole way, and having a GoPro in my one hand. And I was separated from the boat, literally the middle of the Atlantic, 4,500 meters deep, and separated from the boat. And yeah, you're right. It's middle of nowhere. While you were describing that, the essence of finding yourself in these isolated places, yes, you brought back a memory. Fasti and I stood on the boat, and I would I'd be lying if I said it was the middle of the ocean. We're probably just very far from any land. And we stopped, and it was dead calm. Robin, the water was glass. Um, and I told Fusty, while we're sitting there or standing there, keeping quiet, you could almost hear the noise that silence. We could listen and we could hear the noise of silence. It was stunning. Your heart beating in your head. You could hear your heartbeat in your ear. It was phenomenal. There was no lapping of waves. It was dead quiet. The second time was one that stands out for me. And there were so many moments like this, but I obviously having a conversation with you like this, it just brings things back into my memory and jogs my memory. We were north of Puerto Rico, north of the Puerto Rican Trench, maybe 200 miles, and we were getting sucked up at night into towards the Bermuda Triangle, and I literally believed we were going to get sucked up into the triangle and disappear.
Yeah.
And we were trying to row so hard every day to get out of that northerly suck that was happening current. The one evening we were sitting down, it was 10 minutes to go before darkness, and it was as if the biggest, deepest noise from a tubular sound that vibrated, resonated on the water, vibrated in our bodies. Two blue whales that had just come up past on the glassy water, just breaking the water and blowing. We were gobsmacked. Yeah. We could not believe these whales had come up so close to us. If anybody has got any idea of how big blue whales are, you can just imagine how tiny we felt.
Yeah.
It was astounding. Yeah, so that was one of the wildlife scenarios. And then many minke whales used to follow us. You'd be so surprised how a minke whale would hang around for 3 hours, just circling our boat and circling our boat and circling our boat in the middle of nowhere. And then sharks, those long fin Atlantic sharks. Oh man, they also get lonely like us humans. that shark would hang out. The one hung out, and people, again, if they've seen some of the footage of the shark racing towards the camera that I was filming at the back of the boat, that shark was with us for probably a day.
How funny.
Didn't want to leave us.
Yeah. How funny. I wonder if there's some electromagnetic or something that cameras are putting out as well. Because I've had that before with fish. Like I've had pulled up a giant, I think it's called a lingcod up, that's clamped, actually not even on the hook, it's clamped onto another fish. Just like, once their jaw locks, they're coming up with you. But I remember putting a GoPro, putting a camera down into the water, and then suddenly this big fish, was probably 20 pounds, unclamps and then comes and goes straight for the camera, just heads straight towards the camera. Like,
wow.
It's something, I don't know what it is that they're seeing or sensing, it's interesting.
Robin, on my third crossing of rowing an ocean, I actually was doing a couple of hippie things, man. When the whales used to come nearby, I would play them rhythmic beats on the side of the carbon fiber boat.
Okay.
And for 10 minutes, I'd be just beating a beautiful, like sort of more of an, I remember the tune I was playing, a little bit of an African drum beat.
Yeah, okay.
And I genuinely, and you can judge me, the listeners can judge me. My goodness, I thought I was connecting, man. I was connecting. That the whale also, I've got footage of that whale drifting alongside us.
Amazing.
Just alongside us. And
so amazing.
You can see her so clearly staring at us. Yeah.
Oh, you made me think of another quick story. Actually, when I was in South Africa, I was over in, it was down at Bocham's Bay. And there were a bunch of dolphins swimming behind the wave break there. It's probably 200 meters, 250 meters out in the water. And I just at some point, for some reason in my mind, I decided I was going to go and hang out with them, because I've never been that close to dolphins before, at least not for a very long time. Yeah. And I'd always been in a boat. So first of all, I just convinced my wife that we were going to go out in a canoe, and then totally misjudged the waves, and a big one came in and rolled us, trying to get through the break, which I'm sure you've experienced many times. And it actually even hit me so hard that it knocked my GoPro off my head. I had one on my head.
Wow.
So I left with my tail between my legs. And the next day they were there again, and I was like, right, I'm gonna go out there. I'm not gonna take a boat or anything. I'm just gonna swim out there. I tied a GoPro to myself, and I just swam the distance out there. And I got to quite close to where they were, but then they kind of just like headed off, in the distance. And I thought, oh no, I've come all the way out here, and they're not there. But what I actually started to do then, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna speak dolphin and see what happens. So I stuck my head under the water. I made this like cacophony of weird noise, creaking, did my best flipper impression, did all that stuff. And the funniest, like, they turned around and they came straight back. It was
wow.
It was.
No, I believe dolphins have got a success. No, you definitely did bring them back. That's for sure. I mean, I'm not a dolphin whisperer either, but I think you're probably a bit closer to that description than most of us.
But anyway, they came back and they swam all around me for about 15 minutes, and it was just absolute euphoria,
Wow.
Yeah, incredible experience. I'm sure it's nothing compared to some of the interactions you've had with blue whales and things right by you.
No, man, I love hearing also something like that that's relatable. Having Fusty on the boat, it wasn't on our Pacific trip. It was on the Atlantic trip. It was obviously dolphins usually found closer to land. Nonetheless, there was just humongous school of dolphins. The whole ocean, the whole ocean was just packed. And I mean, we've seen big schools of dolphins. Yes. This was mind-boggling. So we're both standing on the side. Now, remember, our rowing boat is maybe just off the water, like 20 centimeters. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, what is that? Like 10 not even inches, 10 inches.
Like 8 inches,
so 10 inches, 8 inches. And there we go, watching the spectacle unfold. We are staring. I've got the camera a little bit underwater, and our beautiful footage of them all just flying past us. But the majestic visual presentation was in front of us above the water. I see Fusty standing to my left-hand side. I see the dolphins flying at us. And at the last moment, all of them just dipped obviously with the sensory perception being so attuned, they could dodge us very, very simply. This tiny little boat didn't bump into us. The one dolphin, Robin, came flying. A big, I think it was a big male dolphin, had flown towards the boat, slowed right down, drifted on its side. It lay on its side alongside the boat. I could see its eye clearly through the water, and it looked up at Fusty, staring at Fusty. Fusty stared back. You will laugh now, and people listening will laugh now as well, but you told your story first because you spoke dolphin first. Fusty had eye contact with this dolphin. I was watching this play out in front of me, and I was blown away. Fusty stared at the dolphin. She stared at the dolphin. She lifted her right hand and she waved, Robin. She waved the dolphin that was less than a meter away from her. She looked at me and she was teary already. She looked at me and she said, I just waved at a dolphin. Robin, that dolphin stopped to look at who was on the boat, what was going on there. Yeah. I am convinced of that.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you had Fusty on in the conversation, she would probably tell you it's an absolute fact. That dolphin stopped to interact with her.
Yeah. I love the more time you spend in nature, the more opportunities you have to observe animals up close and really see their thought process playing out as they're going about their business, thinking about various things, getting distracted. And I think it's incredible. We have so much more in common with animals than maybe conventional human wisdom likes to think.
For true. It couldn't be further from the truth. I agree with you.
So there's one thing I wanted to ask you about. I mean, you talked about some amazing high points there on your expeditions with Fusty, But you also had some pretty scary moments as well, right? Like, I think you even capsized the boat in a big storm whilst you were crossing the Atlantic. Is that right?
Yeah, that the first trip we had a lot of knockdowns. The one we had a capsize, we were thrown out of early morning. It was this 11 to 13 meter swell. Eh?
Wow.
People who've been on the ocean, imagine 11, 13 to me, 13 meter. And I'm only giving you what the weather prediction was, 11 to 13 meters swell. So did it look bigger? It looked
Oh,
way
yeah.
bigger.
When you're in
I
the
mean,
water. Yeah.
that's probably, yeah, it was mountains, and these waves don't break like they would on the beach. So I mean, it's not as if they're curling at like 11 meters, but the top of them, the top 3, 4 meters. So a monster 8 foot wave is breaking at the top of these 2, 3 meter waves are breaking, and when they smash our little boat, they can literally pick it up and throw it. And the one day we were thrown, I was looking the opposite direction and was caught off guard. Not that it would have changed anything, and I was thrown bang out of the boat. I can remember just churning, swirling underwater, trying to find up and down. And then I popped out, and then I saw the boat 10 meters away from me, 30 feet away from me, upside down as well. And yeah, I was wondering, where's Fusty? What happened to her?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was knocked out of the boat, what about her? And then the boat shook. We had done the things that we're supposed to do religiously, and that's keep the hatches closed so that we don't flood the boat. And the boat self-righted. There I saw Fusty. She had not moved 1 centimeter. She stayed in a rowing seat. She was upside down, underwater the entire time. I was watching this boat thinking, I wonder where she is. And there she was holding her breath. She tells a wonderful story when she's in front of audiences of, how she was contemplating, should she try to loosen her feet? Because your feet are tied into the rowing position.
Yeah.
And she said, should she untie her feet now? And then she said to herself, nah, take another second. And she made a little conversation with herself, and eventually both self-righted. And then, I mean, goodness me, I was lucky enough that it was the boat had also turned to its side, so it was reaching to the swell and to the waves, and I could swim back to the boat. I was again only in my underpants and my t-shirt, so I swam back to the boat and got back on. But I always tell the jokers that Fusty, before I got onto the boat, asked me to swim out and go fetch the bottle of olive oil that was knocked out of the boat as well. And for the record, I did not go get the olive oil. I left it exactly where it was in the ocean.
Oh, you did.
But yeah, that was the one time, Robin. There was another time when we were swimming and I got separated from the boat. And what saved me was the fortune of leaving the Rapala lure, the fishing line, behind the boat, and I caught the fishing line. I tried 3 times to swim back to the boat, and it failed every single time. But I was holding the camera in my hand, so I wasn't able to swim as fast as I normally would.
Yes.
And the wind was picking up and was blowing the boat away from me. And then I started swallowing water, and I couldn't swim anymore.
Ugh.
What saved my life was that fishing line. I grabbed onto the fishing line, and can you believe the only time we actually did this, we had put on a few cameras, the GoPros on the actual boat, and we captured the moment of me missing the boat and then being rescued and saved.
Wow.
And being saved by grabbing that fishing line. That was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my 25 years of what I do for a living. Even the Liberian story, it has me on my bicycle trip understand the danger I was in.
Yes.
But I've stood on stage with Fusty, her recounting the trauma that she was going through. And you can hear it in her screaming when you hear that footage. You hear her screaming when she realized I was getting too far away from the boat and I couldn't even swim. I was battling to keep my head above the water, and you realize the emotions she was going through. Wow.
Yeah.
She was watching me drown, man, and knew that I wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, that must have been a terrible thing to see. Yeah, it's amazing how things can just change, hey?
Yeah, but that's adventure. So, I mean, again, relatable. You talk to the people in our tribe, if we could call it that, that like adventure. We've all come close to discomfort where you realize you're taking a chance. And maybe I've just taken it a little bit too far sometimes, but I think it's relatable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got one last little section, if you don't mind, that I wanted to ask you about.
Please.
Okay,
Please.
so
Please.
then I wonder, you had these amazing experiences with Fusty, and you did a few more ocean crossings, but your adventures kind of entered into a bit of a different chapter of family life. You decided that you wanted to have a family, and I wonder then, did your perspective or your desire for chasing dopamine or these big adventures, did it change in you, or was there a bit of a bumpy landing, so to speak, of priorities having to change and you kind of wanting to go on adventures, but obviously needing to be present as a parent?
Nah, no, not at all. Absolutely not. There's one greatest gift that we've been given as humans, and that is to be a mother or a father. Even for the people who are not who haven't had children or don't wish to, that's fair enough. But I can tell you nothing has compared or made me feel the joy. The two greatest days of my life, Robin, were the mornings that my two boys were born. Nothing has ever, when I say come close, I mean it for that. Nothing has brought that joy, that emotion, that unscripted new vision that I have for life, the unselfishness, it's not about me. Not all of us feel as if we're not selfish humans. Wait until you have children, and then you're willing to give your last little bit of food for them, even though your tummy's grumbling. I have handed over plates of food with joy to my kids and say, please, I want to look at you and see that you've eaten when we've been camping, and then they just eat my food as well. But to answer your question, no, it was not a bumpy landing. These miracles that we're given, these little humans that we get the privilege to look after. Wow, phenomenal time in my life.
So do you have any plans in the future to do any adventures with them of kind of a grander scale? I'm sure they're too young right now, probably, but have you had any ideas or ruminations pop in your mind?
We've been quite adventurous. We we were on the way to Madagascar the year before last.
Okay.
Little Samuel was 2 years old, and
Nice.
James was, how old was James? Like 5. The two of them on a sailboat up the coast, African coast, the wrong time of year, against the fastest flowing currents on the planet in the Gullis. We went to Mozambique. My wife had hooks go through her fingers while she was trying to put the fishing rods away. Boat busy breaching, line snapping. No, they had a real baptism of fire in the sailing part of the world. But as I speak to you now, I'm in the Royal Cape Yacht Club in Cape Town, the oldest yacht club in South Africa, and I'm busy here just preparing our boat. We've always dreamed of circumnavigating the planet as a family. And we leave in 2 weeks' time to go to one of the most isolated islands on the planet, known as St. Helena. Many people know Napoleon was buried there. But this little rock in the middle of the Atlantic, we sailing there with my little 4-year-old and my 7-year-old boys, and they're going to have to hold on. It's winter time, it's huge oceans, it's the wrong time of year, but no, we're an adventurous family.
Yeah.
You would find us doing something adventurous regularly.
So how long is it going to take you to get to that island, do you think? I mean, obviously, depending on varying factors.
No, Robin, it's usually from the worst case scenario to the best case.
Yeah.
Possibly 15 days to 18 days.
Okay.
The worst case scenario, 22 days, if really we don't have any wind blowing. But it's winter time. We have, as many people know, this time of year down south. Antarctica really, 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 really fuels up the weather systems off the African coast. So there's no shortage of wind this time of year.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, bon voyage, man. That sounds like an amazing trip. And also a fantastic formative experience, I think, for your kids, right? To experience that level of wilderness and adventure. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to be seeking that out for the rest of their life.
Man, you touched on something earlier. It was like saying, what are my boys? Is there big expectations for them? And I spoke to my older boy, and we had a nice, frank discussion. I was saying to him, does he want to sail? Does he want to be adventurous? And he said to me, actually, Dad, I don't know how to tell you. And he's only 7 years old, sitting in the back of the car. And he said to me, we're sailing to St. Helena. He doesn't know where St. Helena is. And he said to me, Dad, I've got to tell you, I'm grateful. And I mean, he's just probably speaking with a little bit of naivety. But he said to me, I've got to thank you for, making this possible for me, because there's no kids in the world that get this. Oh, man, I just thought, wow, this is like pulling at my heartstrings. And he doesn't even know what he's really talking about. So, of course it is. It's opening a world. Robin, you and the listeners and the followers of your podcast know that you have a difference in intelligence in young people who've had the privilege of seeing the world, meeting people from other cultures, other countries. There's a maturity that's in a young child that's beyond their years. And I think and I hope that that's what I'm gifting my sons as well, is that, they're going to know about the world a little bit and not just be, curriculum A to B.
That's so true. Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely amazing talking with you today, Riaan. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your stories and your bubbly attitude to some pretty terrifying situations as well.
No, man, it's a privilege. And thank you. Thanks for putting the platform together. It's awesome. Keep speaking to the diversity of people you've got. I'm glad we made it work and got the calendar going. I hope people enjoy. If there's anybody that would like to just hear some more, or, they can just go to the website. I don't know how you can let people reach out to us, but please, man, if there's any questions, please have people reach out to us. We'd be so open to questions or queries, etc.
Yeah, perfect, man. I'll put a bunch of links down in the show notes, but I'm assuming all the social media. Also, you have a website, right, which has a bunch of information on it, but also all the books that you've written. People can go there and buy them.
Absolutely.
And
we appreciate people's interest, yeah.
Yeah.
So of course,
absolutely, man. I've got, I guess, one last thing. If there was like one piece of advice for anyone who's listening, who's thinking about maybe doing something different from the norm, what would that be?
It's quite easy. I didn't need to pause like I just did.
Just took a nice drink of water.
But I don't want it to be advice. I just want it to be encouragement, man. Yeah. It's people need to be honest with themselves, and just my messaging over here would be very simple. Get out there and rather be the doer, not the talker. We've got enough people standing around fires, chinking the beers, talking about what they're going to do, Stop being the talker, be the doer. And the uncomfortableness of being that guy taking the first step, being judged, feeling out of depth, inadequate, imposter syndrome, you have to feel that awkwardness in that first step. When you get to the second step, third step, Robin, it's a breeze, man. You'd already know 100% more than everybody else who was just talking and talking and talking. Be the doer. Be the doer. Get out there and do.
Amen to that. Well, thanks, Riaan. And hopefully, I'm sure after some more adventures, I'd love to get you back on and have a chit chat at some point.
Cheers, man. Listen, thank you. Keep the platform going. Look after the South African girl. You've a big responsibility over there. You don't want the swell and dumb mafia to be coming looking for you. Look after her.
I will. Okay. Thanks for your time, man.
Cheers. Thanks.
Right, cheers. Bye.
Cheers, man. Thanks, Robin. Ciao, ciao.
Right, that's another episode in the bag. Once again, a huge thank you to Riaan. I wish you the best of luck on all future adventures. He has actually very kindly offered to do a Q&A session. So if you have any questions for this absolutely bonkers explorer, adventurer individual, then shoot them over to me. You can send me a message on Instagram or shoot me an email. I will put a link in the show notes. If you got to this point of the podcast, then that's probably a good sign. It would be fantastic if you could give us a follow, share us with a friend. In fact, do all the things that people who enjoy podcasts do. It would be appreciated. Right, that's all from me for now. Keep safe, and until next time.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.